Hey everyone, this is John from Project Libertas. Some of you may not know, but this program I'm doing is just a little sort of mini lecture program that explains the ideas that govern the world. So, for the most part, we're going to be looking into ideology, maybe some religion and worldview, and we're going to see using our reason how these ideas play out in just reality. So, today, like last week, we did just a quick Ideology 101 overview, but today we're going to we're going to be becoming more specific, and we're going to deal with themes or meta concepts that govern the specific ideologies that we mentioned last week. So last week, if you haven't watched the video, we mentioned we tried to explain in a short amount of time what liberals and conservatives in American politics believe in. Now this week we're going to explain. We're going to give you the why. We're going to explain why they believe in what they do. We're not going to be like the media and just, have a subjective narrative that we've accepted, because the media, whether you like them or not, are extremely ideological, and tell you the what that has happened in the world, and then try to imbue it with their own meaning to try to skew the news. We're going to actually give you a why for each ideology. Today will be liberalism. Next week will be conservatism, and then let you decide, which one you that more closely aligns itself with your views, or which one sounds more rational to you if you're undecided in that regard. So, themes in each ideology are important because they permeate all the actions and all the thoughts and concepts of each ideology. They're kind of like a governing. They're like a governing concept within the ideology. So, they're important because they're also important because they give you the why of the actions of the people that hold the ideological belief. They don't just tell you the who, what, when, and where. They actually give you a philosophical explanation of why these people are doing what they're doing, why they're exerting their will in such a way. So, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. It more or less explains human action in an objective, truthful manner to the beginner, and not just a skewed, basically dishonest manner that you get from the media, the educational system, and so on and so forth, and by all the institutions that are held by liberals and progressives. So without further ado, we're going to get into what liberals believe in, and what their main theme throughout modern-day liberalism, because it's not the same as 100 years ago, but it is fairly similar, what the main theme of modern-day liberalism is. And what I would argue, from my readings and my conversations with a lot of liberals, is that the main theme, at least of modern-day liberalism, is egalitarianism, and not just the belief. Okay, for those of you who don't know, egalitarianism means that everyone should be equal. And now at face value, that sounds really good, because it sounds kind of something the founders that founded America accepted. A lot of people would think that they were egalitarianist, but they weren't. Not like the liberals. They were in a conservative sense, or in a natural law sense, not the modern day liberal sense. Egalitarianism basically means equality of outcomes. And so this might sound good because you might believe that everyone's equal, and there's no difference between this person or that person, and that's a very widely held belief, and that is just but I would like to sit here and tell you that that's just your conditioning talking to you. There are obvious differences between the person who you are, and then the person on your right, or who you are and someone in prison. There are obvious differences between you and them, and these differences arise by the accumulation of actions that we undertake while we're here on this earth. Okay, so for instance, you can do something that'll compromise your standing as a person and make you not as equal to the normal everyday person. So for instance, you can murder someone, you can rape someone, you can commit grand theft. Things of like those are obvious crimes, and a lot of people can point to those and say, oh, well, we deserve to treat these people different because of what they've done. They've compromised their standing as a normal citizen. So there are crimes that are not so obvious, that people cannot point to because their condition has not allowed them, Yet we'll go over some of those today that will also compromise their standing as a person and say these people are not equal to us. Not in a bad way, but in just a common sense way, that we're not all equal because more or less we're not all the same person. So the reason why the liberals believe this is because for two main reasons. One of them is because they perceive oppression within the society. This stems from the fact that liberals see everyone divide up everyone into groups and ever expanding subgroups. And if they see that a certain subgroup is more prosperous, or a certain subgroup has infiltrated certain institutions of power more than other groups, then the only explanation for them is that it's because this certain subgroup has plotted and schemed its way into power like they have, and is not letting anyone else in like they have. So basically, they believe that power explains societal actions. The second reason is because it's psychologically soothing to them. They want to believe in egalitarianism because they don't want to believe that anyone else in society is superior to them, either intellectually or ethically. They're very egoistic people. They believe that they are almost perfectly virtuous, and that if anyone else can just believe and do what they do, the society would more or less be perfect. So it's very psychologically soothing for them to believe that everyone is equal. And also, as a little third point, it doesn't force them to justify or rationalize their ideology against the opposing ideology if all ideological views are more or less equal, because it's called universalism, that all the same ways lead to the same thing, or truth is relative, that whole sort of fallacy. So there's a way that they have to accomplish this egalitarianism within the society, and the main way they do it is by violence or force. Now, a lot of you might say, well, aren't liberals the pacifist? That's what comes to mind when you think of a bleeding heart liberal. Or aren't liberals very peaceful people that are against violence? They're against the death penalty and that sort of thing. But what people don't realize, because their conditioning has not allowed them to, is that the way the liberal accomplishes their political agenda is through the power of the state. And since the state is the only institution in the society that has the monopoly of power and force to use against the individual or groups of individuals, that is basically another term of saying that they use violence or power or coercion to achieve their political agenda. So liberals, by their very nature, fundamentally employ and believe in violence to accomplish their political ends, just because of their almost reverence to the godlike or deity state that they believe in. So they basically employ people, or they employ the state to compel people to obey their ideological preferences using force if necessary. Why do they do this? My main conclusion is because they have a normative perception of what reality should be like, and if this normative perception of what reality should be like is not met, what they do is they have to use violence to change and mold society into what their normative perception is. And there's basically no rules that dictate what they can and can't do, as long as their normative perception of reality is met, because that's what liberalism is. It is a normative agenda, a normative political agenda that they want to implement or superimpose into reality using force. Some quick examples of egalitarianism, liberals' egalitarianism, is wealth redistribution. So basically, we're going to use the concepts we just talked about and apply them to these. So what they do is they use the state for wealth redistribution to take property or money from a certain group of people that they arbitrarily define and give it to another group of people that they arbitrarily define. So when I say arbitrary, I mean there's no really objective means of defining who is rich and who's poor. There's no objective numerical value of defining who's rich and who's poor, because if you want to take an objective value of the entire world, the people they'd redistribute wealth to in America are exceedingly rich as compared to the entire world. So when they say we need to give more to the poor or whatever, they're not really talking about the poor objectively. They're just talking about the poor subjectively, in this case in America, because America is, as we all know, is still one of the most wealthiest nations in the world. A second example is affirmative action. They use the courts, the undemocratic means of the courts and the power of the state to enforce whatever their, or to end oppression as they see in society. So what they do is they take an arbitrarily defined identity group, such as African Americans or women who aren't really a minority. You know, they see women as a minority group as well, but even though women are the majority in America, and they use the power of the state to place these people into jobs and other occupations that maybe other deserving people, in an objective sense, through qualifications and abilities, deserve, and the company would hire if it wasn't for the power of the state interfering into their lives and saying, we're going to sue you if you don't, toe our ideological lines. So that's just another example. And then the last example I want to talk about is homosexuality. They also use the undemocratic means of the courts to overrule entire states voting to ban what they define as marriage, as between a man and a woman, and apply it to the extreme minority who has still yet to prove that their lifestyle or their actions are moral, not in an objective sense. And the reason why liberals do this is because they believe that everyone should, or at least they believe that homosexuals should have the right to marry, because more or less they see these two people and they see them in love like a heterosexual couple, so they make the false equivocation that since these people can be in love and heterosexual people can be in love, there's fundamentally no difference in between the relationship. Most people that have their heads screwed on right know that's wrong, but that's how liberals perceive it. So they obviously don't have an answer for banning polygamy or banning pedophilia, banning bestiality, those sorts of things, because those people could be in love like the homosexual couple. So it's like an arbitrary definition of what marriage is in order to support their political agenda. So basically the main point of all this egalitarianism, it's not a positive egalitarianism, it's a negative one. All it does is it expands the power of the state over the individual throughout the society. That's really the main focus of liberalism, is to accumulate as much power as possible in order to implement their normative agenda into reality. So that's the end of our discussion. I hope you learned something. If you have any feedback, just like comment on the bottom of these. We're done. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Just remember that there's a lot of people out there who believe exactly how you believe, and there's more of you than you think. So come back next week, and maybe you can tell a friend about this really raw program.